In other words, this document shows that in choosing to withhold 3 of the 4 interviews from the Epstein files, the DOJ has granted Maxwell potential blackmail on the sitting president of the United States. That is kind of wild. This guy, Roger Solenberger, has been putting out all of these new articles on the Trump accuser. And this is a new one that was published today. This is something that has been known since the birthday book. It's been speculated that she released it or her family released it. The document, which was reposted after I reposted the removal, shows Maxwell's lawyers possess 3 FBI interviews with an underage Trump accuser that haven't been released to the public. So these are probably things that are in the 6 million or 3 million or how many of her files still haven't been released to the public. On Wednesday, I reported that the Justice Department had removed from its Epstein file database a key document about a woman who told the FBI that Donald Trump assaulted her when she was a child. By Thursday evening, it was once again live. It's unclear why the DOJ deleted the document in the first place. It's also unclear why they put it back up after my reporting, which included a screenshot of relevant information and a link to an internet archive of the full record. That's probably why, because they were like, oh, okay, it's all over the internet anyway. We can't. You would think that they would have learned that they can't just like delete things after putting them up, but they do it anyway, which just makes them look more guilty. The information in the document pertaining to the Trump accuser, whom the DOJ identifies as a victim of Jeffrey Epstein in the early mid 1980s, doesn't appear altered in any way. However, the existence of this record, more specifically the public's knowledge of its existence, carries significant implications when it comes to the president and the DOJ's posture against Epstein co-conspirator Ghislaine Maxwell. That's because this document shows the FBI conducted not just 1, but 4 interviews with Trump's accuser. And as I reported Wednesday, while the government gave all 4 of those interviews to Maxwell's legal team ahead of their trial, the government gave only 1 of those 4 interviews to us in the Epstein files. And that was probably by mistake. In other words, this document shows that in choosing to withhold 3 of the 4 interviews from the Epstein files, the DOJ has granted Maxwell potential blackmail on the sitting president of the United States. That is kind of wild because it's saying basically the summary here is that the Maxwell legal team has a whole bunch of different documents that the public doesn't have, obviously, from discovery and disclosures and things like that that have happened in the course of their various legal proceedings. So many of these documents probably incriminate a bunch of people, including Trump. And anything that Maxwell has that the public doesn't have is leverage for her. And it says Maxwell held this leverage over Trump since her team received the files in batches from DOJ prosecutors as a standard part of their trial prep in 2021. In April, July, and October, the records show. The victim was suing Epstein's estate at the time, settling with a reported payout in December 2021. So a court has determined that this was credible enough to get a payout from Epstein's estate, and this is somebody that's also accusing Trump. But if DOJ had released those interviews with the Epstein files, as it appears the laws absolutely requires, any leverage Maxwell had would be gone. Yeah, so it's saying if the DOJ actually did what the law said with releasing everything in full, then this leverage would not exist. Instead, Trump's DOJ, starring Pam Bondi, Todd Blanche, and Cash Patel, let her keep it. What's more, the American people still wouldn't even know that Maxwell could potentially be blackmailing the president with these sworn victim statements if it weren't for the existence of precisely this document. The record that disappeared and is now back online is an evidence catalog showing that those interviews were among the non witness material that the DOJ prosecutors produced for Maxwell's defense team. In other words, this document is proof that Maxwell's attorney have those 3 interviews. It's also proof that all 4 of those interviews, part of DOJ's Maxwell trial evidence, should in fact have been released to the public in the Epstein files. Why didn't Trump's DOJ release all of the victims' FBI interviews? Why would the DOJ be fine with Maxwell's attorney holding these records while apparently denying them to the American public in defense of the law? The DOJ should release those interviews to the public, an act that would coincidentally considerably weaken the hand that we now know Maxwell perhaps uniquely holds over the president. Trump has said multiple times in recent months that he would consider clemency for Maxwell. Yeah, exactly. And I feel like this has a big, big part to do with it. Yeah, so this basically talks about how they're kind of positioning for some kind of pardon or clemency or something like that. And this document here is all of the evidence that the Maxwell legal team has from a specific trial. I'm not sure if this is her whole trial because this seems like a short list, but regardless, I think because of how these interviews are labeled and the initial release that happened, they were able to kind of pinpoint that some of these documents that the Maxwell team has are incriminating things about Trump that the public doesn't have. So it's literal proof that she has blackmail on him, and this is probably why she's staying in that nice place and all that. But an email thread between presumably DOJ attorneys a few weeks after Trump lost in 2020 discussing the possibility of him pardoning Ghislaine Maxwell. For reference, Maxwell was arrested in July of 2020. She wasn't convicted until December 2021. So, is it because of that thing that we saw when because she had that info that we just saw a minute ago? Let's see what it says. Thanks. Let's just hope it's as off base as it sounds. The reporter is Tim Wick, who correctly reported, even though it's much easier to predict, the Flynn pardon before it happened. What? Where can we get on a call now? I'll call in and conference you. Just FYI, I forget how this went with D'Souza, but there wouldn't necessarily need to be any communication with us before pardoning one of our defendants, correct? That's correct. So they, for some reason, put this on the second page. Normally, I wouldn't send something like this because it seems so unlikely. But just FYI, a reporter who's been reliable in the past is hearing serious rumblings from the White House about a pardon. Oh, wait, it says subject, Ghislaine Maxwell pardon down here. Wow. And they're talking about this in 2020, November of 2020. So this was after he lost the election but before he was put out of office, before January 6th, but I believe after election day, right? So they were thinking that he was going to pardon Ghislaine on his way out. He might already knew that she had that information from Discovery or whatever. This is just crazy.